Let's learn how to use Lucidchart to create an entity relationship diagram, or what we call an ERD. So when you go to lucidchart.com, you'll sign in using whatever account you have, and then we're going to look for either ERD right here or a blank ERD down in your template area. I'll just click on this one, choose ERD, and then we can choose a blank ERD. And Lucidchart will open up a brand new web page for us that we can use to make a database entity relationship diagram. And so when I come down over to here on my tools, you'll see that there's one called entity relationship. And within each of these entity relationships, we have different boxes. This first one allows you to simply just put, I'll drop it there, the table name and then field names. The second one allows you to specify the table name, the field names, and whether or not it's a primary key or a foreign key. The third one allows you to put the table name, field name, and the data type associated with each field. And the last one allows you to put the table name, whether or not it's a primary key or foreign key, the field name or column name, and the data type. So let's go ahead, I'm going to delete those, let's go ahead and create some relationships. I'm going to use this one, and I'll drop it right here, and I'm going to create a diagram that allows me to track cars that an owner might have. And so I drop my first table on there, and let's go ahead and give it a name of owners. And within the field itself, I'm going to drag and make this bigger. The field name, we're going to have an owner ID. I use an underscore, you don't have to. And this owner ID is just going to be a generated number. So let's just go ahead and give it an int value. And since this owner ID is going to be the unique identifier, I can come to key and say PK because it's going to be a primary key. And over here on the int, I could even come over and say comma, not null. Meaning that that field, owner ID, will be an int and it cannot have any blanks. It has to have a value associated with it, and it will be a primary key. Let's go ahead and make another field in there. We're going to keep this simple. We're just going to call this owner first name, and that will be a varchar, meaning that we can have characters in there, and we'll say that it will have 30 at the most, and once again we'll say not null, and it is not a key, so we'll wipe that out. And actually we need to make sure we spell that correctly. And then the last column will be owner underscore last name, and once again this will be a varchar, but we'll do 50 characters, not null, and it is not a key either. So that's our first table we have for owners. Let's drop another table on there, and we'll put this table right here, and this table will represent cars or automobiles. We'll actually call it the cars table, and let's make this a little bit bigger. And the first field here, we'll call it car underscore VIN, which stands for the vehicle identification number. That is a unique number that identifies cars, and this is a varchar for 17 characters, and it cannot be null. And then the next field that we'll do, let's have the car make, and that will be things like Toyota, Ford, Honda, things like that. And so we really don't want to have the whole name show up, we just want to have a code show up. So we're going to say we need another database table, and we already know that. So I'm going to drop it down here, and we're going to call this the makes, spelled correctly, and this will be the make underscore ID, and that's going to be a varchar for 3 characters, and that will be the primary key. And then the next field will be the make desk. That's just going to be a description, and that'll be a varchar for, we'll say 30. And then we don't need that key, so we'll highlight that, get rid of it. And then we don't need this row right here, so we right mouse click and we choose delete row. So we can wipe out that row so it doesn't exist anymore. And that will be our makes table. And we want this car make. In fact, we probably should change this and say car make underscore ID, or better yet, we'll just use the same name as the table record that's down here. Now what we can do is we can just grab this primary key and attach it to that field. Now let's take a look and see if this is right. This says many cars can have one make. So this is saying one make, like a Honda, could be found on many different cars. So it's a one-to-many relationship. And that would be used as a lookup table. And let's go ahead and make that a foreign key. So we'll just type in FK, and we need to make sure that that is a varchar 3, not null, because it will match this down here. And I'm going to come down here and also say not null, which tells whoever designs this database they need to put a restriction on there that you have to have data inside those fields. So far we're saying everything has to have data. And we're just going to keep this simple to where we have a car VIN and a make ID, and then let's just put a description. Now we could have models and all that type of stuff, but we're just going to keep it simple. So we'll say car desk, and this will be a varchar for 50, comma, and it also has to have that. And let's say that we want another row, so we'll say insert row, right mouse click, insert row below. This is not a primary key. And we'll say car underscore value, and this will represent how much the car is worth. So we could come to type and type in decimal. Usually proper standard is we don't really use money and small money, but we'll use decimal, and we'll say parenthesis, and then you put the total number of digits that you might be working with. And so let's say that the very most this car could be worth is, over $100,000. So we know that's 6 digits, but we also want to account for 2 decimal spots. So we'll say 8, 2, and we will say we might not know the value of it. So we'll go ahead and say null. So this says this number can be 6 to the left and 2 to the right of a decimal. So now we need to somehow attach this owner to cars. Well, one owner could hold one car, but one owner really could represent multiple cars. They could have multiple cars maybe in their garage even. So, and many owners could have many cars. So if we said just one owner has one car, we could actually put another database and make it one to many here. Just somehow say put the VIN ID over here or the owner ID over here, and that could work out since it is just one car. So I could come to this table and right mouse click on this column and choose insert row below, and we could say this is going to be an FK, and this will be owner ID, and it'll be an int, and we'll say it can be null because there are some cars that maybe are not owned. And then what we can do is drag this primary key and let go, and so we're saying, in fact I'll drag this down here to try to We can clean it up just a little bit, maybe. Make it look a little bit nicer. We're now saying that one owner could own many cars, and each of those cars would have one make, like Toyota, Honda, whatever. Now that I have the database designed, what I can do is click on Export, and I can choose the type of database I'm working with, and this generates all the source code that I want. So I could copy all that and come over to SQL Server Management Studio, spelled correctly, still spelled correctly. And I just had it there, SQL Server Management Studio, and I could open that up, and now I could take that SQL code that I generated over in Lucidchart and come into SQL Server Management Studio and connect to the database. And once I connect to the database, I could come over here to Databases. And if you take a look back on that SQL Server or on the Lucidchart, you'll notice Create Table, Create Table, Create Table. There's nothing that talks about the database itself. So you need to come to Database and choose New Database and give it a name. We could call it our Vehicle Database and click OK. And now that we have the Vehicle Database there, we can say let's run a new query, this button right here. And when you run the new query, you have to say what database you're working with. Now I could come in here and type in the database, use vehicle, semicolon, but another way I could do this is simply by coming to this drop down box and choosing the database that I want to work with. So I could choose vehicle, and then I could paste that structure in here and then go ahead and execute that structure. And what you're going to have to do now is clean this up, because it's saying, even though we said SQL Server, maybe we didn't type in exactly what we wanted to do. And so we have to figure out what are errors and what are not errors. And maybe that means we have to get rid of all these little commas that we typed in back in Lucidchart, because we need to follow the exact same structure that the system needs or the database. And so we need to go and get rid of these commas. So get rid of the comma that was there. Let's scroll down and get rid of these commas. And now it looks like our structure looks okay. We fixed all the errors because we're following the same SQL that SQL Server understands, and it knows how to create the indexes because we said PK and FK. Let's execute one more time. Command completed successfully. We come over to here, look at the tables, and now we have our tables. Now while we're here, let's try one more thing. Let's go ahead and click on Database Diagrams, and it says you cannot do this. So click OK, and right mouse click on the database and choose Properties, and then go to Files, and you need to make sure you have an owner in here, which in my case I do, but click on the ellipsis. And if you didn't have an owner, you'd click on Browse and go choose an owner that you can work with. Make sure you have administration security to do that. Click OK, click OK, click OK. Come back to here, and you should be able to install Database Diagram Support. Now this could be saying that I don't have administrator rights. So I could come back to the database one more time and click Properties, right mouse click on the database, go back to Files, click on the user, Browse, and you need to find one that looks like you could have administration rights, which SA stands for System Administrator. Click OK, 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 and now come back to Database Diagrams and choose New Database Diagram. Do you want to install? Yes. And now you can start working with the ERDs in SQL Server. Notice I highlighted them and I clicked Add, click Close, and the databases are here. And then I just have to make connections between those fields. And I can just draw those and drag and drop. And we'll go ahead and say that's a connection there, and make to drag and drop to make there. Okay, and we can make our own diagrams in SQL Server. And that's how we work with ERDs.